Have you ever noticed something strange? There are certain people who almost never get angry, rarely react, and hardly ever feel the need to explain themselves. Yet somehow, no one seems able to manipulate them. No one pressures them. No one can easily provoke them. And no one seems able to control their emotions. Not because they are physically stronger. Not because they speak louder. But because they possess something incredibly simple: calmness. In today's world, many people try to control others through emotion. They provoke you. They make you angry. They make you feel guilty. Or they push you to react immediately. And the moment you react, they gain the advantage. Because manipulators don't actually need power. What they really need is your reaction. But calm people are different. They don't rush to react. They don't get easily provoked. And because of that, they become extremely difficult to manipulate. More than 2,000 years ago, Stoic philosophers already understood this. They believed that true strength does not come from controlling others, but from controlling your own reactions. In this video, we'll explore why calm people are so hard to manipulate, and what begins to change in the way people treat you once you learn to master that calmness. To truly understand why calm people are so difficult to manipulate, we first need to understand something important about human nature. Most manipulation does not rely on intelligence. And it rarely relies on power. Instead, it relies on something far simpler: your emotional reaction. Think about it. When someone wants to control a situation, they often don't try to dominate it directly. Instead, they try to trigger you. They might criticize you in a subtle way. They might question your abilities. They might make you feel guilty for something that isn't even your fault. Sometimes they rush you into making a decision. Why are you taking so long? Just answer me right now. You should know this already. Other times, they provoke you emotionally. They may insult you. They may disrespect you. Or they may simply push your patience until you react. But all of these tactics share one common goal. Not control. Not dominance. But reaction. Because the moment you react emotionally, something changes inside your mind. Your thinking becomes faster, but also less clear. Your focus narrows. Your emotions take control of the moment. And in that exact moment, you become easier to influence. You may start explaining yourself too much. You may try to prove that you're right. Or worse, you may begin defending yourself against accusations that were never true in the first place. This is how manipulation works. Not through strength. Not through authority. But through emotional leverage. And this is precisely why calm people are so difficult to manipulate. Because when someone tries to provoke them, they don't immediately react. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't feel the need to prove anything in that moment. Instead, they pause. Just for a moment. And in that moment of pause, something incredibly powerful happens. They create a small but crucial space between what happens to them and how they choose to respond. To most people, this pause looks like silence. But in reality, it is something far more powerful. It is control. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. They believed that true strength is not shown in how loudly you argue, but in how calmly you remain when others are trying to provoke you. Because the moment you control your reaction, no one else can control your mind. More than 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote something remarkably simple, yet incredibly powerful. He reminded himself that other people cannot truly harm his mind unless he allows them to. In other words, the real danger was never the insult, the criticism, or the pressure from others. The real danger was losing control of his own response. Marcus Aurelius ruled one of the most powerful empires in history. Yet every day he faced criticism, political pressure, and constant conflict. People challenged his authority. People doubted his decisions. And many people tried to influence him for their own benefit. But instead of reacting emotionally, Marcus trained himself to remain calm. Because he understood something most people never realize. The person who controls their reaction controls the situation. Think about a simple example. Imagine someone at work suddenly criticizes you in front of others. They question your ability. They challenge your decision. And everyone in the room turns to look at you. Most people would immediately feel the pressure. Their heart rate rises. Their emotions spike. And they respond quickly. Maybe they defend themselves too aggressively. Maybe they start explaining too much. Or maybe they react emotionally and escalate the situation. But now imagine something different. Imagine that instead of reacting immediately, you stay calm. You pause. You look at the person speaking. And instead of rushing to defend yourself, you simply say, "That's an interesting perspective." In that moment, the entire dynamic changes. Because the person who tried to provoke you was expecting one thing: a reaction. But when that reaction never comes, their strategy begins to fail. And suddenly, they are the one who feels uncomfortable. This is the quiet power that Stoic philosophers practiced. Not loud dominance. Not aggressive control. But the simple ability to remain steady when others are trying to disturb your mind. And the more you practice this calmness, the more people begin to realize something about you. You are not easy to push. You are not easy to provoke. And most importantly, you are not easy to manipulate. One of the most powerful habits Stoic philosophers practiced was something surprisingly simple. They trained themselves to create emotional distance from events. Most people experience life like a chain reaction. Something happens. They immediately feel something. And then they react. There is almost no space between the event and the reaction. Someone criticizes them. They immediately feel attacked. Someone disagrees with them. They immediately feel defensive. Someone disrespects them. They immediately feel angry. And because the reaction is so fast, they rarely have the chance to think clearly about what is actually happening. This is exactly the moment when manipulation becomes possible. Because emotional reactions are predictable. If someone knows what makes you angry, they can trigger that anger. If someone knows what makes you insecure, they can use that insecurity. And if someone knows what makes you defensive, they can control the direction of the conversation. But calm people break this pattern. Instead of reacting instantly, they step back mentally. They observe the situation before responding. They ask themselves simple questions. Is this criticism actually important? Is this person trying to provoke a reaction? Is this situation even worth my energy? This small pause changes everything. Because the moment you begin observing your emotions instead of obeying them, you regain control. The Stoics believed that emotions themselves are not the enemy. Anger, frustration, disappointment, these are natural human experiences. But the danger comes when emotions begin to control your decisions. A calm person may still feel anger. But they do not become anger. They may still feel pressure. But they do not let that pressure dictate their actions. Instead, they remain steady. And when someone tries to manipulate them through emotional pressure, the attempt simply fails. Because manipulation requires one essential ingredient: an emotional reaction. Remove that reaction, and the manipulation loses its power. Over time, something interesting begins to happen. People start to notice your calmness. They notice that you don't react the way others do. They notice that you don't rush to defend yourself. And gradually, they begin to treat you differently. Not because you demanded respect, but because your calmness quietly created it. Once you begin practicing calmness, something interesting starts to happen. You begin to notice patterns in how people behave. Things that once felt confusing suddenly become much clearer. You start to recognize when someone is not simply expressing an opinion, but actually trying to influence your emotions. And many times, manipulation does not look obvious at first. It rarely begins with aggression. Instead, it often begins with subtle pressure. One common sign is emotional urgency. A manipulative person may try to make you feel that you must respond immediately. They may say things like, "Why are you hesitating? Just answer right now. It's a simple question." The goal is to remove your time to think. Because the less time you have to think, the more likely you are to react emotionally. Calm people recognize this tactic. And instead of rushing, they slow down even more. They take their time. Because they understand that clarity often requires patience. Another common sign of manipulation is guilt pressure. Someone might try to make you feel responsible for their emotions. They might say things like, "If you really cared, you would do this. After everything I've done for you. You're disappointing me." These statements are designed to trigger guilt. And guilt can be a powerful emotional lever. When people feel guilty, they often agree to things they normally wouldn't. But calm individuals notice what is happening. Instead of reacting emotionally, they pause and ask themselves an important question. Is this actually my responsibility? Very often, the answer is no. A third sign of manipulation is provocation. Some people try to gain control by triggering anger. They might insult you. They might challenge your intelligence. They might question your decisions in a disrespectful way. They are not always trying to start a fight. Sometimes they simply want to destabilize you. Because when you lose emotional balance, they gain psychological advantage. But when you remain calm, their strategy collapses. Your silence becomes confusing to them. Your calmness becomes uncomfortable for them. And suddenly, the person who tried to provoke you no longer feels in control of the situation. This is why calmness is so powerful. Not because it dominates others, but because it quietly removes the tools that manipulators depend on. And when those tools disappear, their influence disappears with them. But there is something even deeper about calm people that most individuals fail to understand. Their calmness is not just a reaction. It is a form of awareness. Most people move through life almost automatically. They react without thinking. They speak without reflecting. They allow their emotions to decide their actions. And because of this, they become predictable. If someone knows how to trigger their anger, they can control them. If someone knows how to trigger their insecurity, they can influence them. But calm people develop something different. They begin to observe themselves. They notice their emotions as they arise. They notice the impulse to react. And instead of immediately following that impulse, they simply watch it. This creates a powerful form of inner freedom. Because once you learn to observe your emotions instead of obeying them, something remarkable happens. You realize that most emotional reactions are temporary. Anger fades. Embarrassment fades. Pressure fades. But the consequences of your reactions can remain for a long time. This is why Stoic philosophers practiced calmness not as a personality trait, but as a form of discipline, a discipline of the mind. They understood that when you control your inner world, the outer world loses much of its power over you. And when people realize that they cannot disturb your peace, they eventually stop trying. In the end, the true power of calmness is not about winning arguments. It is not about proving that you are right. And it is not about dominating other people. True calmness is something much deeper than that. It is the ability to remain steady when the world around you becomes chaotic. It is the ability to think clearly when others are reacting emotionally. And it is the ability to protect your mind from the influence of people who try to disturb your peace. Most people spend their lives reacting. They react to criticism. They react to pressure. They react to every comment, every opinion, and every disagreement that crosses their path. And because they react so often, their emotions become easy to predict. But the person who learns to remain calm becomes different. They become harder to provoke, harder to pressure, and much harder to manipulate. Not because they are trying to control others, but because they have learned to control themselves. The Stoic philosophers believed that the mind is the only thing that truly belongs to us. Everything else in life can be influenced by chance, by other people, or by circumstances. But our response to those things is always our own choice. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself of a powerful truth. If someone insults you, the insult itself is only sound. It only becomes harmful when you accept it as something that must disturb you. In other words, the real power always lies within your response. And once you understand this, you begin to realize something important. No one can truly manipulate a calm mind. Because when you control your reaction, you control your peace. And when you control your peace, you control your life.